Hello and welcome to the Money Marketing Podcast. I'm Kimberly Donder, Digital Content Manager. And in this week's Weekend Essay podcast, we have acting editor Michael Klimes giving his personal account on social care. Take it away, Michael.
I have one piece of advice if you have an elderly relative in hospital desperate to be discharged near Christmas. Don't do it. Last November, my granny had a fall in her flat. We could not go and see her due to the Omicron wave and the fact she was in a COVID ward. My mother, a psychologist, was all too aware of how isolation can affect mental health, especially if a person is vulnerable. Granny, or babička, as we call her in Czech, was 93 and in an unfamiliar place. The family worried about how the consequences of the fall might be worsened by loneliness. Babička, in characteristic fashion, did not wait around for others to decide what was best for her. She demanded that she be sent back to her flat in Ealing as soon as possible. This subsequently happened at the worst possible time, Thursday 23rd December. My mum and I handled the discharge. The drama was heightened by the experience of having coronavirus in the weeks that led up to this. I got the virus from attending the company Christmas party and only tested negative the day before we welcomed babička back to her home. In hindsight, it is clear the timing of the discharge and my illness up to that point were ominous signs. The subsequent events could not have gone worse, and I received an education into the inner workings of the UK social care system. I now understand that when the press uses the word broken, it is not an exaggeration. The first problem was to find social carers who could attend to babička's needs. That grew in a very short space of time. The immediate impression is of a system that is disjointed. My mum was inundated on Christmas Eve as we tried to celebrate the best we could, but she took on the task of finding help. I remember at least 15 calls on that day alone between eating and opening presents. These calls were with the local council, the hospital babička was discharged from, and her GP. It is hard to think of someone who mum did not call for help. Mum could get hold of few people for understandable reasons. Either they were with their own families or busy attending to a relentless workload. And to be frank, who wanted a fresh problem on their hands? The local council provided the initial wave of people to look after babička. These staff had a demanding rota where they had to go out and make multiple visits to different sites. I saw firsthand their good intentions and the way they turned babička to prevent bed sores and fed her. Unfortunately, they were simply not up to the job of what they confronted. This was no fault of their own, but simply the conditions they worked under. Time poor, under-resourced, and I suspect under-trained. I can see now our family were exactly in the same position as we raced against time to prevent babička from deteriorating. Mum managed to secure items the hospital should have given us with the discharge: slide sheets, a hoist, nappies, and commode. Eventually, these all arrived, but only after babička developed a sore that went to the bone on her bottom. Before this, she had shown the promise of improvement as she exercised her legs. Mum and babička got into a rhythm for, at most, a week that inspired the hope she might even walk again. The goal had been to get her out of bed as quickly as possible and organise a live-in carer. Babička wanted to live out what was left in Ealing. This did not happen, and she had to go back to hospital for the sore to be monitored and repaired. That episode of the ordeal took a month, and in the meantime, Mum found a nursing home for her in Kidlington, Oxfordshire. Babička has been there since February and is well looked after. The only difficulty is that each time I visit, there is less of Babička there, as the journey to death speeds up. Still, there are turns in the road that have caused laughter and crying. On one occasion I asked in Czech, "Jak to jde?" This means, "How are you?" "Hovno," was the response. That translates to shit. There has also been the legendary eye roll when one of her carers has done something she does not approve of. I've also been fortunate to introduce her to my girlfriend. This made Babička immensely happy, as marriage, children and family are everything to her. Her satisfaction from the introduction quickly turned to what is next. When are you moving in together? When are you marrying? And when are you having children? The cheekiness and smile which she asked these questions was all her in that moment. During another visit, I was happy to tell her the girlfriend and I have moved in together. Again, she was extremely happy for a brief moment, and then the conversation moved to marriage and children. "We are waiting and will do it in good time," I said. "What are you waiting for?" was Babička's impeccable logic. She got me there. If you have met the right person, why wait? The need to get on with life and focus on what is important has been given focus by my interactions with Babička. I was not able to see her much during the COVID-19 pandemic, and that point has only become more poignant. Towards the end of my summer holiday in late July, Babička suffered a stroke. She is now paralysed down her left side and only able to eat purees. We drove to see her straight after our return. Seeing her in such a state was very tough, and I cried. To my astonishment, she was still able to speak some words in broken Czech and English. And to my surprise, I was able to communicate better with her during these post-stroke visits than the ones before. She also asked to drink water and talked about wanting to eat cake and chocolate, and how she looked forward to Christmas and seeing everyone at a big party. This is all very unlikely to happen, and I'm not sure if she is totally aware of her surroundings, but I marvel at the toughness of this woman. After all she has been through since last November, she is still fighting to stay alive. If it was me in her situation, I would have given up months ago. But Babička has always been a fighter and has a streak of sheer bloody-mindedness to go on and on. The most important thing during these past 2 visits was I told her I love her and thanked her for everything. She understood as she gripped my hand and looked me back in the eye. "I love you," she replied.
Thanks, Michael, for such a heartfelt personal account. We do hope that you enjoyed it. Please do keep up to date with all our new releases via Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you get your podcasts from. You can also keep up to date with all our new content published on the Money Marketing website, as well as our print edition of Money Marketing magazine, so make sure to subscribe. You can also register now to get your tickets to go to the Money Marketing Interactive Conference in London on the 29th of September. So register. Follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. See you next time.